welcome to Candid Conversations with Rennu Dhillon, a Building Women Empowered initiative, empowering women everywhere. What is Candid Conversation? Well, let's begin with the word candid. Candid means straightforward, truthful, and frank. What does conversation mean? Conversation is an informal chat between two or more people where ideas, stories, and information is exchanged. Combined, we have Candid Conversations with Rennu Dhillon, that's me. Every woman has a unique life experience to share. It could be personal or professional. By sharing your story on this platform, you will use and find your voice to inspire others to find their voice too. Through these personal stories, which are unfiltered and uncensored straight from the heart, women will empower other women to make incredible things happen. My goal is to empower you, and you empower me, and together we empower women everywhere. I want every girl and woman to know that her voice can change the world. So if you know any woman that has a story to tell, be sure to reach out to me on the email and number on the screen, and I'd love to have them on the show. Marilyn Monroe said, "Give a girl the right shoes and she can conquer the world." I believe that when women can find their voice, they will conquer anything and everything. Let our voice be the revolution for change. After all, a woman is a full circle, for within her is the power to create, nurture, and transform. Enjoy the show. Today's show is a very emotional, heart-wrenching show. We're going to talk to a parent, a mother who grieves the loss of her son every day, and she'll be sharing with us how does one cope with the loss of a child, or does one ever really cope? We all know that death is inevitable, and each and every one of us is going to go someday. No parent will ever wish to even experience the loss of a child, no matter how old they are, 1 year old, 20 years old, or even 60 years old for that matter. As parents, we want our children to be happy and healthy and to outlive us. The death of a child during a parent's lifetime is probably the worst experience a parent can endure. It shatters core beliefs and the assumptions about the world and the expectations of how life should unfold. The overwhelming suffering and intense emotions that flood will never end. Our guest on today's show, Candid Conversations with Rennu Dhillon, is Smita Lal. She's a resident of San Jose, and she's been living in the United States ever since she was 1 year old when she emigrated here with her parents from India. She's married, she's a homemaker, she has 3 living children, adult children, and her youngest son, Neil Lal, took his life almost 10 years ago due to mental illness. He was only 20. She now tries to help other bereaved mothers cope with their grief by being a listening ear for their sorrows. She's been very candid about her son and tries to help other children who are suffering with mental illness, especially when they feel they have nowhere to turn due to the stigma, and also the fact that many parents don't want to accept that the children have mental illness or depression. From the bottom of my heart, and on behalf of all the families listening today, I want to commend Smita for her courage to be able to share her personal story on this unbearable loss. Well, I want to begin, Smita, by thanking you so much for coming on the show. I can't even begin to tell you how grateful I am, because especially in our society, especially in our Indian community, being Indian, I will say the Indian Asian community, the stigma of talking about the loss of a child, for whatever reason, it's still there. Nobody ever wants to talk about the loss of a loved one, very rarely. And I really feel that if we could educate families to understand that even just simply talking about something is therapy, and other people listening, it helps them overcome their grief, or even a little bit of grief, I think it helps. So I begin by really thanking you, really, really thanking you.
Thank you also. Thank you so much.
So, it's been, I think, 10 years you mentioned that Neil has gone, right?
In May, it'll be 10.
It'll be 10 years. So let me ask you a question. He was 20 when he took his own life, right? When, did you ever see signs of this? Because some of the people I've spoken to have gone through similar situations. They said they some of them did see signs and some never did. It came as a shock. So if you could tell us a little bit about the history of Neil, what was he like growing up, and what happened?
Basically, I first noticed when he got into high school, I guess I paid more attention to him. He had extreme irritability. He would come home from school kind of yelling at me, I guess, to take out his frustrations. He had a lot of anxiety about social anxiety. He hated to go to parties and be with his friends. He wanted to, but he just couldn't. And depression, I could see he was depressed. He couldn't focus in school. He was very smart, but I could see his grades were failing. But before that, prior to that, I know he was bullied a lot since elementary school. He had been bullied there. He had been bullied in middle school. And I don't know so much in high school, but a lot of his behavior, I just thought as part of being a boy and part of being a teenager then. And it's in high school when I really noticed that if I would ask him to go run an errand for me, he will say, "Mom, where is CVS? I don't know." And it was right around the corner and he couldn't think or remember. So I knew, I told my husband, I said, something's wrong with our son. And I think as parents, we all want to be in denial about it. We want to think our kids are perfect. And so my husband he's a medical professional, and he kind of brushed it off. And me just being a housewife and not really maybe being as highly educated as the rest of you, I just thought, okay, what do I know? And so I brushed it off. But he got increasingly worse. He would even tell me, like, "Mom, this world is too cruel for me. I don't think I can stay here." And so I would beg him. I would say, "No, please, we'll get you help. We'll get you the best psychiatrist and therapy." And so we tried all that. He was on medication.
So did he get diagnosed with depression or anything else?
Yes. Clinical depression. Later on, he was diagnosed with ADHD. He had social anxiety. Also, there came a point closer to maybe a couple of months before he passed away, he started exhibiting signs of schizophrenia, which I am diagnosing that. UCSF Early Psychosis Center, and they said, "Oh, he's fine." He started seeing people like coming around his bed and trying to kill him.
Mm-hmm. Now, this was all in high school. Did you ever notice anything when he was growing up and he was a little boy, preschool, kindergarten, nothing?
No. I have 4 children, and I had my in-laws living with me, and I think, I don't know if I just didn't give him enough attention, or of course I would blame myself.
He was the youngest of the 4.
He was just a normal kid. He was very hyper, get angry easily, very sensitive. I think sensitivity in the child is something to notice. Yeah. Even labels on the back of his shirt would irritate him. I had to cut them off. Just interesting things like that, that you wouldn't even think anything of it, but those are some signs. And
you mentioned schizophrenia. Was there any signs of that when he was a little child? Of maybe him talking? Kids always talk to themselves and have imaginary friends.
I always thought he was a little odd in some ways, but that was more in junior high school or middle school. Mm-hmm. I didn't really pay much attention, I guess. And it was mostly his older siblings watching out for him and taking care of him. I was so busy in the household chores and taking care of in-laws and husband and all that. So,
you mentioned he got bullied in school. What was he bullied about? Again, bullying is something a lot of people brush off, or they,
he was kind of nerdy. He was a brown boy, Indian. I think we were in predominantly white areas, living in white areas, and he bullied for his skin color. Being like a nerd. In elementary school, there used to be this boy in his Cub Scout group who would choke him during recess. And, you know, I went to the school, I complained about it, but they didn't do anything. I just let it go. And then in junior high school, somebody pulled a knife on him in the school, and I went and complained about that. And then unfortunately, the teacher named Neil as being the snitch. And a lot of things went downhill from there. He was very with me. And
yeah, I think that's why many children never come home and tell their parents about the bullying. And I think, again, I mean, I've been guilty of this. As an Indian parent, we're so overprotective, right? The first thing you do is you go to school, and that's the last thing the kids want you to do, is actually go to the teacher and talk. But sometimes that's the only thing that you can do. So, I mean, I see that in the business that we do in after school, a lot of kids will come back and tell us, but the first thing they'll say is, don't tell my mom or dad that I told you I'm being bullied, tell me what I should do. Yes. So then, was he open to going to therapy, or did you have to force him to go?
There's so much stigma involved in mental illness. Like that, you don't want anyone to know.
Right.
People make fun of it, or they just think you're crazy. It's what they've seen in movies, like you're insane, or he didn't want to. And I had to beg him. And I said, just try it. If you don't like it, I promise I won't force you. So he did, he was prescribed medication, and I realized now, I mean, not now, but after he took his life, that he wasn't taking them regularly, giving them up.
And that's another thing. As an adult, you can't force them because they're over 18, and it's here are the laws in this country. I mean, I know back home, back in Kenya, at least, our parents can make us do things even if you're 23 years old.
It's very different here. I mean, I had finally towards the end, I had to beg him, like, please give me permission to be on, like, that I can attend your sessions with you. And I think because he was losing hope, and he let me attend. But even with that, once I remember I told the psychiatrist in front of Neil that, because he asked Neil, are you suicidal? And he says, no, I'm not. And I looked at my son and I said, you're lying. And I told the psychiatrist that he is suicidal. Don't believe him. But he asked my son again, and Neil said, no, I'm not. And the psychiatrist took my son's word for it, unfortunately. Yeah.
And so did he say anything to you the few days before he took his life? Were there any signs, or, I mean, had he attempted to do this before? Yes,
this was his, he had a prior attempt 6 months earlier. He would say, like, I'm going to do it. But I didn't, as a parent, you don't want to believe it. And, I would beg him, please don't do this, just trying to keep him staying here. I said, well, we would take vacations with him. We thought that would help. We got him a dog after his first attempt. He survived, obviously. And we thought that would save him and make him want to stay. We tried a lot of things. And
was he staying at home? Was he living at home and going
sometimes. And then my husband thought it would help him if he moved out of the house. Like maybe we were the problem, even though we're the typical Indian parents who are on the kids' case. Our kids have a lot of freedom. They could date, they could do whatever, pretty much whatever they wanted, as long as they're safe. They didn't have the pressure of, oh, you have to become a doctor or engineer, any of that with them. But sorry, I lost my train of thought.
No, I was asking, were there any, the signs before? And you mentioned he had taken it 6 months before.
I mean, he
moved out. He moved out?
Yeah, he moved out to Santa Barbara. He lived close to his cousin, who he was very close with. And I guess he used to share a lot with her. And apparently she knew that he was planning to take his life. And, obviously, I don't blame her at all, because they want to keep, they want to be trusted and keep the secrets of.
Right.
But I also knew that he was suffering. I mean, that's why we sent him away. We thought it would help him, like, to just be on his own. And, he was getting therapy down there also. but then he was just doing worse and worse. We saw he was losing a great amount of weight. We asked him to come back home. His grades were failing even more. And prior to that, he was at UC Davis. The dean told us he's not able to keep up his grades, so they asked him to leave the city, and that sent him spiraling downward.
Right.
His siblings were all graduates of UC Davis, and he felt failure.
He felt failure, yes, of course.
And so, but
I mean, I can't even imagine what you're going through, even as you talk about it, Smita. So, I mean, feel free to share whatever you feel you're comfortable with. So many parents are in denial of seeing their kids depressed. A lot of people who I've spoken to have said, oh, well, I thought he was just going through, or she was going through mood swings because they're teenagers, their hormones are changing. They're adults now. They don't really want to share things with parents. What would your message be to parents who know that there is something, but they're just the doors are being closed on them, or they just feel now you're going to outgrow it anyway?
Honestly, if your children are adults, there's not much you can do. You can just love them. There are a lot of things you shouldn't say to your kids, like, oh, just get over it. Or, I know a lot of Indians think like slap it out of them, and you have to just be very compassionate and don't downplay their feelings. I mean, that's how they feel. Their mind is telling them things that are not rational. And don't deny their feelings. Don't compare it to others. Like, oh, you say, oh, well, we love you so much. You have the best life. Like, you should be ashamed of yourself. Like,
you have everything we've given you. What more could you want?
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, we were a very loving family, and it's devastating to me that my son, he couldn't stay. And
so when he took his life, was he at school or was he at home?
He was at home. So I would say about 2 weeks before he was successful at ending his life, he had said, Mom, like he started feeling hopeless, and
No worries.
He started asking me, he's like, Mom, I want to take street drugs. I need something. That's the other thing. He had started in high school. He started experimenting with marijuana. And I believe that's the first time he started. And after a few tries of it, he said, Mom, something's going on with my brain. Like, I feel like my brain is being rewired and I can't think anymore. It's giving me like weird thoughts, and this is not my body. I'm a boy in a man's body, or what, just things like that. So I did mention it to his therapist, and he said, oh no, marijuana goes in and out of your brain, so it doesn't. But I did some research, and some people, marijuana does affect very adversely and can trigger something in the brain. So anyways, but 2 weeks before he passed, he did beg me, he says, Mom, let me take heroin or whatever he wanted to take. And I begged him not to. And he goes, well, then I'm just going to stand in front of a train. And again, begging, crying, pleading with him. And I used to be watching him. I mean, I almost like for those 2 weeks, I didn't really go anywhere. I wanted to make sure he's okay. The day before he took his life, we had gone somewhere. We had to go to a family's event, and he didn't want to go. And I said, you have to come with us. And it was an important event for this family. And so, but before we left, he was cleaning out his room. He was changing his bed sheets. He never did any of that before. I was always the one who did that. His room became virtually empty of all his possessions. And I didn't notice. All I could think is like, wow, my 20-year-old is finally becoming responsible, and I was so happy. Little did I know he was preparing for his death. So, sorry. So anyway, so we made him go, and that night I could see he was a little distant, and so I I had a little bit of a fear. So I laid in bed with him. We were watching a show at night. And around, I think 12 a.m., I said, hey, let's have some ice cream. I went downstairs, got us both an ice cream bar. And finally around, I think 1 o'clock, I became very tired. I used to be very tired because I wouldn't sleep much because I was worried that he would do something. And I said, Neil, I'm going to sleep now. He goes, Mom, now you can sleep. Now you can sleep.
Mm.
And that was the last I saw my son alive. So in the morning, he used to, never sleep on times. He would sleep like 4 o'clock in the morning because whatever, he just couldn't sleep. Right. And that's another problem when they don't sleep, or when they're not getting enough sleep, that can cause depression. Right. And so I went in his room about 10 a.m. He was still sleeping, or so I thought. So I just said, okay, let him sleep. And then I went again around 12 p.m. He was still sleeping. Didn't think anything of it. It was normal. And then I had gotten a call from my sister-in-law that come over for lunch and come for a short time. And I thought, okay, I can go for about a half an hour. No, he's still sleeping. And I was home alone at the time. My husband was at work, and my other kids must be at their jobs. And so I went, and I came back. I had
so you left. You went to the event.
I left, and even though I said I would just go for half an hour, you know how it is when you go out, you end up staying on. Came back around 3 o'clock, I think, that day. And I ran upstairs. I didn't see him downstairs. And I noticed he's still sleeping, but that he hasn't moved. His position in bed has not moved. And he was a kid who just, he slept all over his bed, failing all night long. And then from the door, I could, I could see that he's totally still. And so I went up a little closer to him, and I noticed he was purple, and he was a more dark skinned. So I noticed though that he was purple and blue. And I touched him, and his body was like ice, and he was already in rigor mortis. And so
I can't imagine. Yeah, please. Yeah.
A lot of screaming, and
of course. So
I called. I had my cell phone in one hand. I had the landline in one hand. I'm calling the paramedics. I'm calling trying to call my husband. He's a physician, so he was not available at the time. Then I called my brother. My brother was like one of the first ones here. Thank God. And yeah, then I was.
Did you figure out? I mean, did they figure out the time of death or what he had done?
They just said the time of death when they came. They don't.
Basically, okay. Oh dear.
Since he was in rigor mortis, he had been dead for a while.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's the worst nightmare anyone could go through. When you have kids, we all we all know death is inevitable, but we also want to we want our kids to outlive us, and of course, I really feel
that, but then my heart tells me he would have suffered for the rest of his life. Yeah. And especially because I do believe he had early schizophrenia. So I think that's even
something. Did he leave you a letter? Did he leave you a goodbye message? Did he leave you any explanation?
He left a note. He just said, it's not because of us. He loves us tremendously. I mean, it was such a loving note, and his depression had taken over the schizophrenia had taken over his mind. And he did a lot of research. He didn't, we found some files that had done a lot of research, and he didn't want to live like this. He didn't want us to suffer. He thought we would be better off without him. And
so is it, I mean, this is another thing, I know someone else who lost their daughter, and she, similarly, the day before, she went and got her hair done, she cleaned her room, She bought new lipstick. She asked her mom to cook her a meal, and the mom's reaction was, "Oh, she's getting better."
Yeah, we thought too.
Yeah, she was getting better. And then they realized that she had researched so much stuff on Google of what to do and how to do it and where to get things from. And that was the shocking part, that it's just so easily available.
Yeah, my son did the same thing. He ordered some barbiturate online from China, and
Wow.
lethal dose. And I mean, because his first attempt, he failed, obviously. That was, yeah. So this time he made sure it wouldn't be reversible. And
so how do you deal with this every day, Smita? I mean, you write such inspiring messages on Facebook. I wait for you to post your stuff because it's always so positive, so upbeat. Always writing stuff
for me mostly, but if it helps someone else, it's good. But it's because I need it. I need to have something to hold on to. I have 3 other older children. He was my baby, and because I can't bear to see the sadness in my older children's eyes. They still suffer. Maybe as a mother I suffer differently, but they still suffer.
Right.
And I want to keep them here. I try to be positive. I'm not always able to be. And sorry.
I assume, I mean, it's again, we talk about how therapy is such a stigma. What would your message be to families out there that have had a loss of a child? A lot of them don't just want to stay home. They don't want to see anyone. They don't want to talk about it. The different ways of grieving. And I know one of the things that I always tell people is never say, "I understand how you feel," because nobody understands how anyone feels.
Even with other moms who have suffered loss by suicide, even we are different. I mean, we all have been raised differently. Some of us, just someone like me, not sure what she believes in, and even more so now. What helped me is to reach out to support groups that were specific to how my son passed, and suicide loss groups of children. And they're even more specific depending on their age. Neil happened to be 20, so I'm in a suicide group that's the age group. There's that I have friends whose son died at 9, or some who died much older. So that has helped me tremendously, because not that you want to know that someone else has suffered your loss, but there's some comfort knowing that someone understands how you feel.
Right.
And I would try to be available to help other moms. I think that's how I deal with my group. Or, there are other children in the family, extended family, who have come to me after Neil's death. And if I can help save one life, not that I would still want my son back, but I don't know how to say it. It wouldn't have made it worth it, but at least could help someone else, some other mother not go through this.
Right. So definitely support groups and remaining positive. And
for me, and just if you don't want to be in a support group, find another mom like me who can tell your heart to. It helps. Keeping it inside doesn't help. And unfortunately, in our community, they just want you to stop talking about it.
Exactly. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Like, I get a lot of messages from family like, "Oh, maybe you should stop posting on Facebook." And I'm like, no, I'm not going to. Maybe I'll help somebody else. And
absolutely.
I think you're looking for pity. Honestly,
you're not.
I don't think that's true.
No, it's not. Yeah. It's empowerment of your feelings. And, I think people don't understand that when you can share your story and somebody else can read it, they relate to it in any way possible, because every loss is different. Somebody who loses their spouse is different from somebody who goes through a divorce. Sometimes a divorce can be more devastating than even a death of a spouse. But, it's just a matter of how you you grieve, but I really feel that talking is one of the best things, or expressing your feelings. And I write, that's how I get over things. I write, and sometimes I just write for myself. I don't even post it. I just write for myself.
I do too, and then I just rip it up because I don't want
Right.
to.
Exactly. Yeah.
That help me, and I am somebody who likes to share. And people might think I'm looking for sympathy. I'm really not. It's just a way for me to. I need to get it out.
Yes.
Because sometimes I feel like it's going to suffocate you, and and I try to live a happy life for I have 3 other kids. I mean, they're all above 30, but still, I don't want them to suffer, and I found other avenues. I go dancing. I like to go to karaoke. I mean, those are things that help me personally to survive my life.
Right, exactly. Well, I can definitely tell you that what you've shared with us today is going to impact the lives of many, and I'm sure people will reach out to you. And I really feel for you, and and I commend you for coming on this show and sharing this experience, because not many people would do this. And I know the pain will never go away.
I appreciate you so much for wanting to do this. It means a lot to someone like me, and because most people don't want to talk about it, and it's hard.
Of course it is. Yeah. And,
I don't want to see any other mother go through this. It's like a living hell. I look fine from the outside, but inside it's torture.
No, I can imagine, and I don't think there's anything that I don't think anyone can overcome something like this. You learn to live with it, but I think it's there always for you. But thank you so much, Smita. Thank you so much. And keep posting those messages for me to read every day, and those beautiful pictures. What you do with photographs and stuff is just so beautiful. Thank you so much.
That's my other way of helping moms. It makes them feel like they got a new photo of their child, and
yeah. Thank you so much. I'm sure this show has touched your heart and nerves like it did mine. You may have heard that depression is simply caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain, but it is more complex than that. Depression is a combination of social, psychological, and biological factors, and can sometimes be triggered by a traumatic or stressful event. Abuse, conflict, and grief are common triggers, but genetic factors play a major role. Depression is often hereditary, and in fact, researchers have defined multiple genes that can make a person more vulnerable to depression. Research has also uncovered a link between depression and the parts of the brain that affect memory and emotions. So if you see signs of depression in anyone, please do not think people are going to outgrow it. It needs to be treated, and you need to intervene as soon as possible. And as parents, don't ignore these signs. Please intervene. Be there for your child. And in the country that we live in here in the United States, there's so much pressure put on children. Take that pressure away. Let them live. Let them enjoy their life. And academically, they succeed, they don't succeed, that's okay. Let your child be happy and healthy. If you're feeling suicidal or know someone that is, please ask for help or call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and the number is on the screen. I'd like to dedicate this poem to Neil and his mama, Smita. I know it hurts, Smita, beyond understanding, not having your child's hand to hold. I can't change this life for you, my friend, but I can be your hand to hold. Thank you, Smita. Thank you so much for being such an empowered woman. I salute your courage to share your story. Thank you. Until next week.